Welcome back, dear students. Third part of this lesson, we are going to discuss on statistical significance and practical significance with illustrations and conceptual understanding. In this, statistical significance on decision of null hypothesis, what we are going to have. If the results are sufficiently improbable under the assumption, one can reject the null hypothesis and conclude that an effect exists. If the strength of the evidence in the sample has passed the defined thresholds of the significance level alpha, then the results are statistically significant. Statistical significance for testing of hypothesis is, the relevance is as follows. The usage of p-value to determine statistical significance in hypothesis tests such as t-tests, ANOVA and regression coefficients is more rational. It might seem logical that p-value and statistical significance relation is important. Hypothesis tests with small effect size can produce very low p-values when there is a large sample size and the data have low variability. Statistical significance for a large sample size. As the sample size increases, the hypothesis that gains greater statistical power to detect small effects. With large enough sample size, the hypothesis test can detect an effect that is extremely small that it is meaningless in practical sense. Sample variability. What it says, when the sample data have low variability, hypothesis tests can produce more precise estimates of the population's effect. This precision allows the test to detect tiny effects. Statistical significance indicates sufficient evidence to conclude that an effect exists. Coming to the practical significance of this, while statistical significance relates to whether an effect exists, practical significance relates to the magnitude of the effect. So, however, no statistical test can tell whether the effect is large enough to be important in the field of study. We need to apply the subject area knowledge and expertise to determine whether the effect is big enough to be meaningful in the real world. Determining the practical significance with a confidence intervals is, the literal meaning of the practical significance is some extent straightforward. Practical significance will have some complications. The effect size in the study is only an estimate because it is based on a sample. It is valid to have sampling error, margin of error around the estimated effect. We need a method to determine whether the estimated effect is still practically significant when the factor in this margin of error. A confidence interval is a range of values that likely contains the population values. The crucial idea is that confidence intervals incorporate the margin of error by creating a range around the estimated effect. The population value is likely to fall within the range of the confidence interval. The task is to determine whether all or some or none of that range representation practically significant effects. Examples of using confidence intervals for practical significance. Let us consider two students on the training program for obtaining the practical significance for the given range of confidential interval. Both students are statistically significant and produce an estimate effect is 9. See this example. Study A confidence interval says that lower limit is 3 and upper limit is 15. The estimate effect is 9. That means 9 is the central value, 3 is the lower limit, 15 is the upper limit. Coming to the study B, it is saying that the lower limit is 7 and upper limit is 11. If you see the range, study A has a large range and study B has a shorter range. That means the range from the estimated effect 9, it is very less in study B when compared to study A. So, what is the significance example of this? Study A's confidence interval extends from a variable too small to be meaningful, means less than 5. to those large enough to be meaningful. Even though the study is statistically significant and the estimated effect is 9, the confidence interval creates doubt about whether the actual population effect is large enough to be meaningful. So, on the other hand, the confidence interval for study B contains only meaningful effect size. We can be more confident that the population effect size is large enough to be cared about. One can use confidence intervals to be determine both statistical significance if they exclude 0 and practical significance. Confidence intervals focus on the size of the effect and the uncertainty around the estimate rather than just whether the effect exists. Statistical significance indicates that the sample provides sufficient evidence to conclude that the effect exists in the population. However, practical significance asks whether that effect is large enough to care about. Use statistical analysis to determine statistical significance and subject area expertise to assess practical significance. Dear students, let us summarize this part. In this part, we discussed about the concepts of statistical significance and practical significance, in which we have considered the notions of null hypothesis, test hypothesis and some few examples. With that, we are trying to understanding the concepts behind statistical significance as well as practical significance. Dear students, let us summarize the overall lesson. In this lesson, we have discussed in detail about what is the statistically significant difference and practically important difference, in which we discussed about the notions of mathematical variable, statistical variable, statistical thinking, distributional thinking and understanding the statistical significance with level of significance, p-value, critical value and the effect size and mean size. Among all these, what we can understand that there is a difference between the statistical significance as well as practical significance. In this way, this lesson will help you to understand different statistical research methods more specific to psychological research. Dear students, I hope you understand the explained concepts well. These are the well established research tools which are developed in statistics that are very much useful in psychological research. We have concluded this lesson by name statistically significant difference versus practically important difference with this. Thank you.